There is a letter from the superintendent to the town manager that Selectman DiRocco asked to be placed on tonight's agenda because we didn't have time to discuss it at our last meeting. So I'll let you take it from there, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I do have a handout for the board members. We got a pretty strong letter from the superintendent. I'd like to read the whole letter if I might.
Sure.
It's clarifying erroneous information. It says an incorrect narrative has continued to be perpetuated and promoted by individuals related to the manner in which the Dracut Public Schools spent the $100,000 appropriation voted on at the November 4th, 2013 town meeting. In response to these inaccurate statements, that the school alternatively framed, either misspent or spent in a manner inconsistent with prior statements, I make the following statement. One, the November 4, 2013 town meeting appropriated $100,000 to the Dracut Public School. When asked how the school might spend the appropriation, it consistently stated that funds would be used to support the purchase of instructional technology material. 3, subsequent to a thorough review and analysis of our inventory capacity and needs, the district indeed spent the $100,000 in instructional technology. In support of those facts, please see the attached documents. Then it goes into the expenditures report from FY14 technology section of the school department budget. As you will see, the district set up a separate line to track the spending of the appropriated funds and to keep them separate from the regular operating budget. Further, as you will see, the funds were set up as an expense line consistent with the purchase of material. A quote from CCS Advanced Prevention Systems, an approved vendor on the state bid list for 84 interactive classroom projectors that met our specific requirements. A copy of the purchase order for the material, as you will see, the PO is coded to the line established for the funds. You will also see additional coding for payment of balance from the district operating budget. D, an invoice from CCS for the material. E, a copy of the check issued for CCS for the material. As the documentation confirms, consistent with every statement by the Dracut School since the town meeting graciously provided the appropriation funds were used to purchase instructional technology material for the district classroom. In fact, the district committed additional operational funds to purchase additional projectors and auxiliary material, cabling, whiteboards, etc., so that each general education classroom from kindergarten through grade 8, the high school renovation supplied interactive technology to do DHS had an operable projector. I'm happy to report that teachers throughout the district are utilizing projectors on a daily basis. As statements to the contrary have been made publicly regarding the truthfulness and trustworthiness of the Dracut Public School, I ask that this information be shared with relevant parties in support of a factual narrative. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Well, first off, I think everything that he says in here except the erroneous part and the statement to the contrary and factual narrative, I agree with. I know what he did. This goes back to October of 2013. And it was all when we were going over what the different articles that were submitted were. And this was the article that was submitted by voter petition. It was to see if the town will vote to appropriate $100,000 from free cash as a supplemental appropriation for the Dracut Public Schools beginning July 1, 2013 for the purpose of purchasing textbooks, paper, instructional supplies for classrooms that currently lack these necessary items. It came before our board on October 22nd, 2013. And I'm not going to read everything, but I will go down to Article 6, when Mrs. Richardson read the warrant articles, and it pretty much says, Mr. Edwards stated that Mr. Pindak's recommendation of dismissal of this warrant article, period. Mr. DiRocco discussed this being able to be done within the budget and that the meals tax income, and at the time, Mrs. Vandal had stated that the meal tax revenue should be able to support this. I'm not going to read more on our minutes, but I will say this. When the people came before us, teachers came before us, and they were saying that kids had to share books in the classroom, that teaching was bringing supplies in to be able to work with the students, I think everybody took notice of that. The override had not passed, so we looked for a way that we could support this because we all felt it was important. So, like I said before, Mr. Pindak, we discussed it, we went through our board, and we came up with giving the school $100,000 from the meal tax, and that money we thought was going to be for what this article read. After doing that, because we were able to put the $100,000 into it, in November 4th of 2013, we had, it was read, Mr. Richardson read the warrant article, and Mr. Pindak stated that he recommended dismissal of the article as it not prudent to use free cash for this. Mr. Pindak discussed saving free cash for emergency. Mr. Pindak stated that he could identify the money out of additional money coming in. That was the meal tax. So then, I took a copy of the minutes of the school committee meeting, which was done after our town meeting. And I'm not going to read it all, but it was January 13, 2014, and it says technology update. The $100,000 from town meeting is being utilized carefully in the district. This funding will be utilized for instructional programs in the district. A technology integration specialist has been obtained by the district. A report will be forthcoming. So when they say it was erroneous information, that's not accurate. What I said, and I don't know if this letter was even pointed at me, but I will say it anyway. What I have said in the past is, and we cannot tell them where to spend their money. And it's a proven, they're going to do it. So at town meeting, the extra $100,000 was put into Article 3. It was voted on, it was approved. After that date, they go back to January, and that's where they spend the money. So at times I have said yes, knowing that, I'm not saying they did anything wrong, because they didn't. Under the law, they can spend it the way they want. All I had said is, when we voted to give them, find that $100,000, it was pertaining to this article. And, you know, did I take exception to it? I probably did. But that's not the thing here. The thing that's going on in this community, if we don't start working together, we're going to get absolutely nothing. And that's what this whole thing is about. Now, it was ironic because the week before, the Lowell Sun prints that it was political, that it appeared, however, one selectman, former town fire chief Joe DiRocco, remained adamantly opposed to a joint override. DiRocco apparently still wants to make the school who would pay for giving the superintendent a $12,000 raise. Well, everybody knows that happened, but it's not me who is punishing them for it. I support their override for them, but I will say that I can't defend some mistakes that they've made, and I don't intend to. I can support the fire, the public safety, I know that side. If the school department wants to do things that are inconsistent with what everybody else is doing in the town, they have to convince the people, not Joe DiRocco. The school committee has to convince them, and a superintendent. And I said that at the last meeting, and I stand by it. If we want to keep doing stuff like this, you're going to get absolutely nothing, because all it shows is more negativity. Look, they've done things I haven't agreed with, and if by saying them is political, I'm guilty, because I'm not holding back for anybody. If they do something and I feel that the taxpayer has a right to know, I'm gonna say it. And I don't care who it hurts, but I'm going to say it, because I think that's what I got elected to do. And that's about it. But my point is that this stuff continues, nobody gets anything. Nothing happens. People are not happy with what's going on. From day one, I said the same thing. The thing that everybody has to do is you have to convince the people that this is the right thing to do. We're not doing it. We're showing negativity. We're not doing it. And that's when everybody needs to get together, and this is what needs to be done. That's my opinion. And Joe DiRocco's alone. So.
Any board members have any comments?
Yes,
Go ahead, Pam.
Mr. Chair. Well, I guess when I look at the warrant article, it's from 2013. It's been 3 years. Apparently, the superintendent felt like he had to defend the purchase. Why aren't projectors and whiteboards and that for educational purposes? I believe they are. You know, perhaps they didn't need to buy textbooks with that money at the time. It was for educational materials. It's unfortunate that the superintendent feels like he has to take the time to write a letter to defend himself. We need to trust in the schools. They are trustworthy, and we need to stop saying that they're not trustworthy. I don't understand it, I guess, why we're rehashing this evening. How does that relate to anything? Why is it even on the agenda? And the fact that they gave out raises, you know, that's their business. And I think we need to move this town forward. We need to look at ways to increase the revenue. The per pupil spending is embarrassing. You heard Rich Cowan talk about it this evening. He is absolutely accurate in the statistics. We should not be fourth from the bottom. We should be like up 6 or 7 notches by now. I don't understand why we're still fourth from the bottom, but it is not proper that Dracut should be there. And as far as public safety goes, of course we need money for public safety. That's obviously evident. But if we made one question, we'd at least make the voters think, all right, this is one town, one question, one vote. Having 2 questions, I don't care what anybody says, will continue to divide this town. And if that's what your intention is, Mr. DiRocco, Mr. Richardson, I guess then so be it.
Mr. Chairman, if I might,
Sure.
also goes into their minutes. They hired one integration specialist. There was nothing about hiring personnel, but seeing that you want to defend the school committee, that's all fine and good. The problem that I do have, and you didn't even vote for either one. You didn't vote for the school side, you didn't vote for the public safety side.
That's right.
Well, just remember that.
But I will vote in the voting booth. Unlike
we
some
all.
people on this board who say they will vote,
Everybody
will not vote in the voting booth. They will say they will vote for it and they will not. And if you want to prove it, take a picture of your ballot and show the public.
So now that we're going way off of what the agenda said.
I don't believe so, Miss Richardson. I
Wow.
don't believe so.
Okay.
Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, well, thank you, because I feel like I get thrown into the. But, so I do remember the conversations that Mr. DiRocco stated. I do remember us having a long conversation about the fact that, you know, we don't have control over how the school committee spends their money. I also feel that superintendent gave us a letter, and Mr. DiRocco has every right, quite frankly, to bring it to the board if he needs to have that discussion. And he and I both had discussions about memory regarding this particular issue. That being said, I think probably it would make sense in the next 2 meetings we have between now and the time that the election happens to perhaps put the budget issues back on the agenda for discussion so that we're not outside of the parameters, and I would certainly weigh in at that point as well. But it may make sense, Mr. Chairman, at least at one of the meetings in April, perhaps the next one, to put the budget back on the.
You can do so. You can do whatever you want to do, Kathy. You have the right to put whatever you want on the
That might be
agenda.
helpful, given that this is apparently still a discussion that needs to happen, so I might do that, and then that'll save us any issues with the open meeting law.
Okay, my only comment, Joe, with all due respect, is, you know, I understand that you're upset. I understand that, you know, you
Don't get me
didn't.
wrong, Mr. Chairman, I'm not upset, because I think that was another thing that probably hurts any override chances almost as much as the raises did.
Well, I think all of the negativity hurts any override chances. And, you know, I can't sit here and listen to what you just say and not say that that wasn't negative about the school department.
Is that
However,
true, Mr. Chairman?
well, first
Did I
of all,
say anything that wasn't
first of
true?
all, I am certainly not going to defend the superintendent of schools. He can do that, and I'm certainly not going to defend the school committee. They're all qualified to defend themselves. But what bothers me is when we start calling them. They did this and they did that. Well, who is them? Why don't you be more specific? Because it is very hard for them to
Superintendent
defend
of the school
themselves.
committee is pretty obvious.
It is
Mr.
very hard for them to defend themselves if you're not naming who it is that you think is the boogeyman out there, and who you think is the person that's causing all of this dissension. I would like to see you name who it is that you think is doing all of this.
I tried to address the superintendent's letter, and I named him by name.
Well, you said them a couple of times too.
Them is the school board.
Okay. With that said, I went back and I looked at the tape of the town meeting, and the article that you talk about, Article 6, was dismissed, and this funding actually came from Article 3, and there was no discussion whatsoever at the town meeting about the $100,000. Now, I agree that I saw the
You
meeting.
were on the board back then, Mr. Chairman.
No, I looked at the minutes, and I saw everything there, and we were talking about books and text and paper and all that. But who's better to decide what they need in the school system than the people that are over there?
You're missing the boat,
Them.
Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me?
You're missing the boat. When I said what they did, there was nothing wrong with it. But when I pointed out how we got there, that's the.
You're pointing out something that happened 3 years ago,
That's the
and
same amount of money.
there are
Well,
people.
I didn't feel, I felt it was brought up by the superintendent.
Well, I think, Joe, that, bringing it up doesn't help the chances of the override passing when you want to bring up all of this negativity. But that's just my opinion.
Well, you should have talked to him about the letter.
Not my circus, not my monkey.
Sounds like it.
Caroline's line. Listen to Caroline.
Sounds like it.
By the way, that's an old Polish proverb. Right, Caroline?
If I may,
Sure.
I have to agree with Mrs. Dristolaris to a point that this is 3 years ago. I see Mr. DiRocco's point he made a statement at our selectmen meeting, and that was what caused the letter to come to us, because Mr. Stone wanted to clarify. I think, unfortunately, the way and I don't want to speak for you, but the fact that he called it erroneous was what you probably took exception with.
Yeah, there were two things, actually, the erroneous part of it and the,
So unfortunately, we have, I think in the past, put the school committee on the defensive. And I think that is probably why Mr. Stone sent the letter to defend himself. That being said, to Mrs. Dristolaris' point, it was 3 years ago. We have worked really hard to come together and work collaboratively with the school committee. And you yourself admitted that, agree that we do need to be positive. We need to put this sort of stuff behind us. And yes, it's good to get it out, because this is why we have open meetings and this is why we have discussions, because things need to be said. Hopefully calmer heads prevail. And I do believe that the last 6 months those 6 months, it hasn't been the last, now we've been out of that session for a while. Or 6 months on the Joint Budget Task Force was very collaborative, and I think it's probably the most information that the town has seen flow both ways, and I hope that continues post-override into the future. And I think we have difference of opinions, and I think we can have healthy discussions, and I think we can hopefully move forward.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Moving on. The next item on the agenda is Selectwoman Richardson's update on the Boston Post game. I'm going to skip over the vacancies. We do have a lot of you want to? Oh, sure, go ahead. I'm sorry, I saw you raise your hand and.
I just wanted to say publicly that it's probably wise that the two chairs, if this board has any continuing concerns about the superintendent's letter and the facts that he was trying to share with you, We'll talk about how we can make the superintendent available to have any questions answered. I think that's probably an important thing to do, because I would agree with Mr. DiRocco. Negativity is absolutely the last thing we would want. So we want to make sure that we clear up any questions that you may have.
Continuation of that is probably just as negative.
It's up to you.
I'm fine.
Certainly up to your board.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have